Welcome to Sound Ceremony, the ancient art of sound healing in our modern day world.
We are on a journey to take our sound ceremony to the main stage.
In this podcast, we dive deep into sound healing, ceremony, raving, and the dance music industry.
Expect intimate conversations with artists who share their stories behind the intention and inspiration of their tracks. I'm Eva.
I'm Lisa.
Welcome to Sound Ceremony. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure to be here.
Today we have Robot Koch, also known as Robert, here joining us today. And Robert, you're someone that we truly have been inspired by and really appreciate your music. We often use it in our sound ceremonies because we feel like it's so healing, and when I listen to it, I feel like it's the universe like giving me this like warm hug. It feels really safe. So we're so excited to dive into your creation and your journey. So we'll start off by asking, what does your intention mean to you?
Yeah, I love that question. Intention, to me, intention is like a subtle vibration, and I'm actually taking a quote from Hazrat Inayat Khan, who's a Sufi poet who I really love. Maybe you guys are familiar. I actually have the book right here called The Music of Life. It's a great book. I can very much recommend it. It's about vibration from like a mysticism kind of perspective. And he speaks about intention in that book too. And the way he describes it is it's a subtle vibration that's behind everything you do. And I can totally agree with that. So behind the music or behind the meal that's cooked or behind the letter, whatever you do, there's this subtle frequency encoded into it, which is, like between the words or between the notes or whatever, and it's something you can pick up on as a reader or as a listener or as a person enjoying the meal, where you really feel like that meal was cooked with the intention of, being to be nourishing, or like whatever the intention is beyond the words that are put into the email or the letter or whatever. The same is true for me. For music, it's like the subtle vibration in the music that I try to encode to be decoded again then by the listener, if he or she can connect to that vibration. And I think we all can. It's more a matter of, do we tune into it or not? Do we meet what's obvious in the forefront, or do we sort of connect with like the meta layer of it? So that's kind of what intention is to me. Like, I meditate often before I create music, and I want the music to be a gift to someone, and I don't stress about what that is or who that is. It's just some intention that this piece of music should hopefully like feel like it's a gift to the person that needs to hear it.
It'll resonate with whoever it is a gift for. They'll
Exactly.
pick it up.
And it's not up to me to decide that, or it's again, it's so subtle. It's something. Here's another quote from another Sufi poet which I like, who's Khalil Gibran. He said this thing about children. He says children don't come from us, they come through us, right? And I see the same way, how my music comes through me, doesn't come from me. So it's all about removing the ego and just being a clear conduit for it to come through. And in that way, I don't have to worry about it so much. Once it's out there, it sort of has its life on its own. And I don't have to worry about like who it reaches and at what time. I just trust that it reaches the people who need to listen to it, when they need to listen to it. And that's kind of, yeah, it's kind of a beautiful way to think about it. Similarly, I mean, I don't have children, but a lot of parents also obsess about their kids and don't let them go. But at some point, they're also their own entities, and you need to let them be, even if they came through you. So there's a lot of things that can be said about accepting what has been manifested through you, and then also letting it go.
Yeah, I have two adult children, and when my son was first born, I never felt, I felt like he had been here before and that he was already ready to go. So I totally resonate with that. And another thing, the way that you compared the intention about cooking and how it can come through with cooking, there's experiments that you can do with food where you can talk to the food and then preserve it. And what will happen is, like the food that you said, if you talked to it poorly, it will go bad, like almost like immediately. It's crazy. So, and that's like a very visual thing for us to see, like these are the words, the feeling, the frequency of those words made this happen to that food. So the same thing will happen to anything we're putting out to the universe, is that whatever frequency we're on, when we're sharing it, is going to be the frequency that other people pick up on it.
Totally. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that thing about the food reference. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
I mean, it makes sense because I think all of this like energy behind intention all comes back to the law of attraction of like attracts like. So your like intention comes from a feeling that's aligned with a thought, like this connection between mind and body. In order to get there, you have to create that space. And you mentioned in the book they talk about it's like the spaces in between everything. The space is the pause where you pause and you're like, okay, what's present right now? I need to be in my body, in my feeling, connect that thought to feeling. And from there, you start to create a vibration. And then whatever's around you is going to kind of like be pulled towards that. And that's what like creates the reality. So I see that with the plants, like you're talking to it from this vibration of like love and nurturing. So like the plant is going to start to be attracted to that and like resonate with that and like grow from that place. But if you're like talking to it negatively, its vibration is going to drop. It's not going to grow.
Right. Yeah, so true. I mean, there's some experiments with water around that as well. So yeah, I think intention, not just the words you speak, which are very, very powerful, but even like the thoughts while you make something. Like if you're cooking and you like really want your family or whoever like to really enjoy this meal, and you're not just like, oh damn, I have to cook and I'm late or whatever. You know what I mean? If you have like positive thoughts while doing that, I think it's just going to be such a more nourishing experience for everyone, including yourself, making it. So I actually really enjoy making music. And for me, it's a form of therapy. I mean, I really work through some stuff. And I don't even know what that is sometimes, it's just like literally my spiritual practice to show up, or part of my spiritual practice to show up every day in the studio and just see what kind of needs to come out. And it's not always that I record everything or that everything I work on is geared towards a release. Sometimes I'm literally just like doing things that feel good. And then I did that for an hour and I'm like, okay, I feel much better now. And I feel, sometimes, oh, there's an idea that's actually worth sharing. Then I will go ahead and like record that idea and maybe polish it and arrange it and work towards the intention of sharing that. But oftentimes it's literally just like giving myself a sound bath.
Yeah. I can relate to that with what I refer to my own spiritual practice. It can vary. Whatever like allows me to like be fully present and connect to that source that I know is bigger than me, spirit, which is weaving itself through everyone. Whether it's like dancing, I'm creating something through my movement, or writing, I'm creating as my hand meets the paper, or I'm singing, or I'm like playing around with music, like creation, tapping into creativity flow is so spiritual.
Totally.
Yeah, it is definitely. And creation is movement. So sometimes when you arrive wherever you're at, you do have to move something through you, and creation allows you to do that. So you might show up and be feeling so a little blah, and then you go into the studio and you start playing with sound and the frequency and the vibration, and you allow it to flow through you as you're creating, and then that's raising you up to find something. Maybe nothing to share, maybe it's just your spiritual practice. So I think creation is a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
It really is. And I read this other thing, I forgot where I read it, or maybe it was in a podcast. Because when you say like you work through things and you move through things, I think like metabolizing emotions is something that's really big in my creation process, And sometimes I find myself gravitating towards like minor chords and things where people could say this is maybe a little more sad, And they're like, "Are you a sad person?" I'm like, "No, I'm actually a pretty happy person usually, but I resonate with that because maybe there's some stuff in me that I'm not even aware of that I need to work through, and that by the principle of resonance, I just need to, like put out there as something, yeah, that allows me to metabolize emotions, even like emotions that I'm not aware of. So there's like two viewpoints on this. Like, if you're sad, should you listen to sad music? Will you get even more sad, or will it actually help you face that emotion and then work through it? And I agree the latter. I don't think like when you're sad you should just put on happy music to distract yourself and like, let's switch up the mood and look the other way. That's not how you're going to face it.
No.
It's all about like feel it to heal it. And then for me that's true in a lot of, there's a lot of depth and like darker undercurrents in my music that are subtle as well. It's not like it's sinister music or whatever, but sometimes there's a melancholic or like a little dark undercurrent under something that's actually beautiful. And I'm sometimes surprised myself that I gravitate towards that. But again, it's like me going into that emotion rather than steering away from it. So, and then again, similarly, like somebody who listens to it, the music can assist that person to work through that emotion by resonating with that actual emotion.
Resonance is a very powerful thing, and it allows you to shake out whatever that is. So you have to feel into it. You have to allow it to rise up. But I would say that even if your songs do have that little bit deeper, darker depth to them, there's
Hmm.
something that flows through them that allows everything to rise. There'll be a melody that takes that, whatever you shook out, and it allows it to move up. And
Hmm.
that is such a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And you can feel that through your music.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's why we use it
Yeah.
in our sound ceremonies, that like the music that we refer to as sound healing that we use isn't us playing sound bowls or certain frequencies. Like,
Hmm.
it's music like yours that we use to start grounding people, because it, like I said, it feels like this giant hug by the universe that makes people feel safe. And those like darker undertones, like lower frequencies, are pulling
Yeah.
you closer towards baseline earth, which is really
Oh yeah.
safe. And from there, like you said, like you start weaving in like a lighter atmospheric ethereal approach to it, like, and that starts raising the vibration.
Yeah.
And it
Hmm.
all comes down to the intention behind behind like your music. What you're putting into it is being received by the listener, and it's resonating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful description. And when you mention bass and low end frequencies, there's this interesting research done by John Stuart Reid, scientist from the UK. I went to a presentation of his a couple of months ago, and he did stuff like experiments with blood samples, and he exposed them to different sound frequencies, and he found that really low sound frequencies actually oxygenate the blood more, meaning to say the uptake of oxygen binding was increased with like the exposure to low frequencies. But they could only be at a certain level. That was the interesting part. If it's too loud, if he's like blasting it with like bass, the blood cells actually die. So it's all about hitting the sweet spot. So like it's movement, because what our heart does, it pumps the blood through like also through the sound wave, if you will. That's like, it's like a mechanical sound wave in the body generated by the heart, and that oxygenates the blood and moves it along. And so can low frequency be basically doing the same thing, or like enhance that effect if it's not too loud. So I was thinking, when I was touring a lot, I was sick a lot. And I mean, that's true because of a lot of things. You're traveling, you're exposed to all sorts of stuff, you're sleep deprived. But I was, playing all these festivals. I was just like blasted by like way too loud bass frequencies. So now, knowing that research, it makes sense to me that all these things combined would probably result in a poorer response of my immune system, which is interesting.
Yeah, it sound can always be healing, but not everyone knows that or even knows how to tap into that. So sometimes when you're at a festival, if the sound, and if you know anything about cymatics, there are
Yeah.
different frequencies that will cause your body to create sacred geometry. And because we are 80% water, we're going to have the same thing happen inside of us. But if whatever's coming out of the very loud speakers, which will cause our body to resonate, is noise, then all that's going to do is cause dissidence in our body, which is disease, and then you'll get sick. So yeah, very true.
Yeah, it's like the balance, I guess. Always, you need to hit the sweet spot, and I think that's what's interesting around science catching up on a lot of these things, even stuff that ancient wisdom teachings have been saying for thousands of years, and now it's backed up by science with the whole quantum physics stuff. And I'm fascinated by like the whole idea of vibrational medicine, how the hospitals of the future might be curing disease with frequency and not with pharmaceuticals. So that's all exciting. There's a lot of research in the right direction, but I think it's all still early days. We will definitely know more, but yeah, I'm just a geek and a total like passionate learner. Like study is play for me when it comes to these things. Like I really go to a lot of these workshops and read a lot of books and even like scientific papers around that. Although I'm an artist, I'm not a scientist, but I have this scientific understanding that makes me really want to find out more, and I just devour everything that I can find around that. So it's exciting.
You're curious about it.
Mm.
And I feel the same way. Like, I love to nerd out about anything when it comes to vibration and sound. And I mean, Rife, if you look up
Yeah.
Rife's work, it was all vibrational based. And I know that it got lost and there's like a whole, dramatic story behind it. But I do agree with you that the future is going to be frequency, sonically based. So for
Hmm.
healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We live in a vibrational world, and I think it's really cool to see that, science is catching up to that, and more
100%.
people are starting to lead with that. And it all direct, like, we are in a vibrational world. We're all energy. It directs you back to like you can truly be your own source of healing if you resonate with a vibration that is healing. Your
Yeah, and I'm
vibration is
excited
going
for
to.
like a more mainstream audience to tap into that too, because there's maybe people like us who are like in the fringes and like nerd out on these things and are like really interested, but just like the three scientists that won the Nobel Prize last year for their work around like quantum entanglement and all that. That's huge, because now it just like proves to like the very science-minded left brain, like mainstream society, that certain things aren't just like pseudoscience or whatever they like to label it sometimes, or dismiss of it. But then, as these things become more and more accepted and scientifically proven, then I think there will be a more open-mindedness towards stuff like vibrational healing, because there's the science backing it up too. It's not just like an airy fairy idea of that
Woo-woo.
people could dismiss as something that's just not true or whatever. Even though if we intuitively know it's true, it's great that science, it's almost sad that science needs to do that, sort of find the proof for something that obviously works.
Yeah.
But we live in a society that is minded that way, and that probably needs that.
They want tangible proof and not we have become removed from our intuition.
Mm.
A lot of people are not tapped into their own intuition and feeling their own vibration and
Yeah.
being able to tap into what's around. So they're full of noise, and that noise is clouding their ability to heal themselves. So since they can't do
Hmm.
it, they need science to show them. And then it's the pathway. So I'm excited to see what happens in the
Yeah. I
future.
mean,
Hopefully.
it's the same for, sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to
Oh,
say
don't
that
be.
same for me with the intuition because, I grew up in Germany, which is also like a very science-minded, left-brain kind of society that I grew up in. It's always about facts and giving the right answer. I mean, I'm sure it's the same in the States, but Germany is maybe even more like engineer-minded and all that. So I would say this is awesome in a way that I grew up that way, but also my intuition was totally neglected. Like that was a muscle that was not encouraged to ever be flexed. So I
Yeah.
was like very heavy on the left brain, and just like the right brain, the more intuitive side was maybe not as encouraged in my upbringing and in the society that I lived in. So it took me years of deconditioning, and it's still a process to sort of connect both of these. Like it's again like the mind and the intellect is a great tool, but as they say, it's a terrible master. So I wouldn't allow the mind to just like run the show. And I'm just literally relearning to tap into my intuition more. And music is a great tool for that, because it's something. If I start overthinking it, I already know I'm on the wrong track.
Yeah.
And it's like it's this instant knowing whether something feels right. It's like paying attention to your body. How does it feel in your body? And there's so much wisdom in that. It just takes listening to that. It's this faint little voice, intuition that
I
speaks
think
once, and if you missed it, then intellect takes over, and then you rattle through the pros and cons of your conditioning.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to it's balance. There's not one side of the brain that we should favor,
No.
and we're like like the right side of the brain relates to the feminine, which is like the left side of the physical body, and then the left side of the brain works with the right side of the body, which is masculine. And
Hmm.
we all are like divine masculine, divine feminine, and it is like within the feminine that you connect with intuition, with spirit. And I think science comes from like this very like masculine driven energy, which is what it's like in the West, which is sounds like what it was like in Germany. And now like I think we get pulled towards like spirituality and Eastern medicine because it's more geared towards like body,
Hmm.
feminine, receive. Let me pause and listen to this more. And we just need a little bit of balance for that. And that's why music is so amazing because music is balance. Like it's a
Hmm.
rhythm that's flowing in sync. It builds this harmony. So when we tap into something that is harmonious, when we're a little noisy or off
Hmm.
balance, like we start to get pulled towards that and we vibrate to that rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true.
Resonance. When did you start your musical journey? You were living in such a science-based world, but there's so much beautiful music that comes out of Germany.
Sure. I mean, again, you're right. It's never about choosing sides or like deeming one thing to be good and the other bad. It's all about
Yeah.
balance and combining these. But I was not brought up encouraged to be an artist or a musician. My parents obviously wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like this, something more traditional.
Practical.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but I was always fascinated by music. I mean, even as a child, just like pressing the key on the piano. My mom had a piano, and just letting that reverberate in the room would just fascinate, just like the space of it, and just like the echo and reverb. So I think it was at the beginning it was more sound that fascinated me than music. And I did have piano lessons, but I was a terrible student. My teacher told my mom she's wasting her money because I was not excited about like learning like Christmas carols and all that. Um, but with hindsight, I'm glad she made me pick up these lessons because I did have some basic understanding of harmonies and stuff, which now helped me in my composition career, and I could expand on like these early things that I picked up on. But it wasn't until I was maybe 12 or 13 that I really became passionate about music. And I think MTV was actually playing a big role because it was like my window to the world. It was like pre-internet.
Yeah.
And, like the music on the radio was all garbage. And then there was MTV and there was all this other music that I was like unaware of. And I stayed up late watching these independent shows, 120 minutes and all that, that had Sonic Youth and all these bands on it.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. So I got into it and I became a drummer. I was a drummer in a band, different bands. From being a drummer, I got interested in like jazz and like became like a crate digger and a DJ. So I was like looking for the samples that the tracks were made of. From becoming a beat maker, I became a producer and eventually like a composer. So it was like a step-by-step process.
Yeah. You followed your curiosity.
Totally
And
did.
yeah, and it was always, so that when we can preserve that it sounds like you preserved that somehow through your childhood. Like
Hmm.
you pressed that piano key and that sound, that sonic vibration was so interesting to you that it didn't matter what was practical. Our parents just wanted the best for us wherever they're from, right? I'm Greek. My
Sure.
dad wanted me to definitely marry a good man and do, you know what I mean? Everyone has what they
Hmm.
want you to do. And
Sure.
it's not, there's not, we're finally tapping into the generation where they're like, no, follow your joy. But
Hmm.
that curiosity, you followed it. It sounds like that the evolution was picking up so much pieces that you can tell after you tell your story that they're all part of your music now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're totally right. It's following the intuition and the passion and the curiosity.
yeah.
So that's always the best North Star for me. And that's also my music evolved over the years, because I followed what felt good and not what was logical to do. Because at some point I really burned out from like heavy touring. I was touring for like 10 or 15 years and, played everything from like Boiler Room to Coachella. And it's great and it was great. But at some point I realized I always enjoyed creating new things more so than just being on the road and being in that whole grind of music industry, make a record, tour it, make a record, tour it. And I was like, this takes so much time and energy from me. I just literally just want to be in my studio and be left alone and create. So I
Yeah.
was like dreading the upcoming tours. I know this sounds surreal because artists, want to go on tour and they want to be, successful doing these things. And I was, but I was also unhappy. And I was like, what's wrong with me? I'm living the dream and I'm not happy. And I realized, there's shades of gray. It's not black and white. It's not like you're an artist, you need to do this. It's like the blueprint that the music industry tells you how this works. And I needed to find my way through that and sort of redefine that for me. I could find that passion and enthusiasm again, which to me looks like playing less, playing more intentional shows when I play them, but not depending on like being a touring artist for a living. And I found other ways to, like make a living, which is more like in the film composing world and, sync and all that. So I just created a reality where I can create a lot, which is awesome. And again, it's not a blueprint. Other people might do it differently. And I encourage everyone to find their unique formula on how this works because there's no one size fits all way to do this. And yeah, so.
Like that like comes back to the balance again, where like touring feels like this like do,
Mhm.
very masculine, and then the creativity, creation, getting in the studio seems more like soft, and that's like the
Yeah.
feminine side. So like you were being pulled by that because it felt off balance.
Yeah, that's a good observation. It was actually like the studio for me is more receiving
Yeah.
than doing, you know what I mean? And then the touring is like this do go 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 thing. And studio is just like, okay, let me meditate, let me receive something, and then literally just like make it accessible. So it's
And
beautiful. And the balance is always what I seek. So once I mean I have a show tonight. I'm not saying I never play. I have a show in LA. It's gonna be an interesting experience, very small but curated event. And I like these things. So I do want people to experience my music in a live setting, and that's why I'm also like interested in the whole immersive installation world. I did this show for planetariums, which was a big success, which I'm also now licensing to be a standalone show. So it's like playing in Berlin 10 times without me being even there.
It's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, so that's cool. So again, like you find your ways to do things so music can be experiential and people can experience it in real life. That doesn't mean that I have to travel around the world all the time.
Yeah. We did look at both of the events that you have. Well, you had one last week and then this week, right? Or is it this week twice?
Yeah, you're right. Last week was one, and then this week.
And they both looked absolutely, absolutely incredible. We wanted to come so bad, but it just was like too short notice. So we definitely want to come to the next one if you have like 2 weeks out.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah,
I
because they
will
just
will
look.
keep you posted on that.
I mean, Lisa can speak to it because I was actually supposed to come out with her when she went out to LA and saw your show,
Right.
and the dates were wrong, like on the Instagram post, and I couldn't change my
Oh,
flight. It was like a weird thing. It didn't matter. She still
yeah.
went, but and she just like came back and was just like, it was just incredible. It was so beautiful.
Oh,
I
So
love
wow.
that it like small and intimate. I feel like
Yeah.
that allows for me as the receiver to drop in a little more deeply because like when we're in these bigger settings, it can be a little harder to tap into presence because there's more noise, there's more people around you, sometimes there's people talking and
Yeah.
there's just a lot of energy. But being there, I was able to drop in, like connect with my inner child and like went really deep into a meditation just from
Oh,
listening to your sounds. So
that's
yeah,
beautiful.
really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. I want it to be that. Again, we come back to intention. I want to play these small intentional events which allow for people to have those kind of experiences, that are not like big messy festivals with like sponsors and like beer and everything all around and different energies overlapping and craziness. And
yeah,
I've done all that for many years, but I really feel like also I'm too sensitive of a person to stomach all of these overlapping energies. And there's also a lot of toxicity in that realm. A lot of people in it for the wrong reasons. And, money being one. And
yeah,
it's okay, it's weird. Just like the whole, and I don't want to blame it either, because everything has its place and its purpose. I just want to say that I outgrew some of these things, and I realized that I need to protect my energies a little more because I'm more susceptible, whatever the word is, just you know what I'm saying,
yes.
susceptible to it. Yeah. Um, so that, yeah, it's a gradual process. I'm just excited to keep going and keep refining it, basically.
We started off with teaching and in small settings and haven't burned ourselves out, but we are approaching what we want to share with the world, which is sets being full sound healing on the
Hmm.
main stage.
Nice.
And yeah, and going back to like the go, 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 we already, set boundaries where it's like, we're not going to say yes to everything because that's like kind of a way that you're supposed to, that's like the entry level into trying to build your name is like, say yes, do this, exposure, exposure, go, 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 go. And I think there's a different frequency that you can tap into.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's why you reach burnout.
yeah.
It has to be a like because you're constantly saying yes, so you're being pulled by this like external energy
Hmm.
all the time, and then you have nothing in yourself. But
Yeah.
when you like say yes, and then you counteract that with you know what? I'm actually going to say yes to myself this time, which is actually a no because I need to
Hmm.
refill my cup. Then
Yeah.
you're always full and you don't burn yourself out.
Yeah.
And that's so important because like I truly believe that all humans were put on this earth to be of service in some
Mm.
way. Whether or not we like connect with that way, which is like our soul's purpose, is really like I think our personal dharma, but we have to fill ourselves up in order to be of service to the world around us. And if we're empty, that's a disservice to everyone around us, always.
Yeah, that's so true. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
You mentioned like your spiritual practice being your creativity, like when you're getting in the studio. Is there any time that you're not in the studio and you build in a spiritual practice around your life? What does that look like?
Yeah, I do have like a more traditional spiritual practice, I guess. Like I've been meditating for 8 years, so I'm sitting twice a day, usually in the morning and in the afternoon. Um, and that really helped me a lot, and it still does, and it's still hard. It's not like you're an experienced meditator and then you just, you switch off and you're like in bliss. It's still like, oh my God, my mind is so busy and I'm just observing it right now. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's different modalities. I'm just, again, like a curious person. So I like to understand things more in depth. So I don't tinker with like a lot, but the things that I do decide to look into, I usually like explore deeply. So another thing that I'm into is like gene keys, which is like a human design offspring, if you will. And I've been studying that for many years, and that also helped me a lot around like some personal growth and insights. So yeah, there's different modalities, and I mean, I practice yoga. I'm also a certified yoga teacher actually, but that happened only because I wanted to deepen my practice, and my friend who ran the yoga studio was like, "Do you want to come to the teacher training?" I was like, "I don't really plan on being a teacher, but yeah, I'll come and I'll do the 300 hours."
Yeah.
So I got the certificate, and I'm a yoga teacher, but I never actually taught a class except for friends. Like when we're maybe at a cabin somewhere with a few people. I'm like, "Do you guys want to do yoga class? Let's do it." But yeah, it's cool. It's nice.
Do you think that diving into the physical practice, the asana practice of yoga, made you approach sound differently? Or did it
I'm a
change?
very heady person, and anything that gets me in my body is very conducive to my work. Because
Yeah.
also music can be cerebral because you're thinking about decisions, and you're like, especially when you're in the composition phase where you're not just improvising and just like receiving and channeling, but like, okay, here's like a nugget, here's an idea, like, how do I develop this? How do I turn this into something like a full piece and plan it out more? So the planning and logical brain plays a big role in it. But for me, knowing when to pay attention to my body is really vital, and yoga helped me with that. Just like literally paying attention to my body. How does this feel in my body? How am I breathing? Am I breathing? I mean, obviously I am, but am I aware of it?
Yeah.
And I I kind of do that when I make music too. And this enables me sometimes to slice off a lot of unnecessary things in a composition where I'm like, what if I mute this, and that? How does that feel? Oh, there's a lot more space, and I feel like I can breathe more, and I feel like I'm paying attention to so many things. Just like this one thing I'm listening to, and I can really like sink into that. So these are like even like compositional decisions made from the body, if you will.
Yeah. I agree with that definitely feeling into your body, because your body is, there's all different your body resonates like at different
Hmm.
frequencies. So when you're able to feel into that and you know that it feels good, you're actually tapping into a vibration
Hmm.
that and a physical practice does help you get there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
totally. It's always the physical and the metaphysical, that balance, which is really interesting. I mean, the body really is a portal into all of these things, and we sometimes neglect that, or I sometimes neglect that because if my mind is too busy and I try to solve everything with the mind, I neglect that the body is actually the portal that gets me inside and gets me closer to my intuition and all that, because it's a bodily wisdom and intuition. It's like, how does this thing you're presented with feel in your body before your mind kicks in and dissects it and like analyzes it through the filters of your conditioning. Because there's a bodily response right away, and it takes being tapped into that to notice that. Is there like a upward pull, or is there like, this kind of doesn't sit right? but it's probably a good idea. It sounds great on paper, but something in my body doesn't tell me it's good. So if I miss that, I might say yes to something that's actually not going to be that great for me. Like a lot of things, coming back to the touring thing, saying yes to like great gigs that were paid well and were great exposure, but were connecting with like horrible flights and like me, not paying attention to my sleep, or just like doing things that were nonsensical, like flying 14 hours for one show and then fly back, where I'm even like, this is not sustainable. Like for me as a person, for the planet, like we don't need like an artist to fly 14 hours to a show, even if it's like a well-paid gig. I just disagree with these things nowadays. So I think like there needs to be a more ethical way to look at music industry and touring. And that's why I'm saying a lot of people are in it for the wrong reasons, which is money. They just want to pocket as many shows, and the bookers want to drive the artists to just like book out all the festivals. And I just literally disagree with it. And I don't judge it though, because a lot of my friends are on that grind and just, making bank doing all that, and God bless them. But I do think that's not the way forward at the same time. So I can hold both of these. I can disagree with it and try not to judge them for it at the same time.
Like thinking in your mind, you're
Hmm.
being driven. Like I think I'm abundant because I have all this money. But like to actually be abundant is a feeling that's sourced from your body. So if you're
Hmm.
not connected to your body and you're constantly in your head, like yeah, of course you're gonna let that drive your motives all the time, which is like
Hmm.
presence is the body is a portal, like truly, and presence is a portal. And your
Mm.
body is a portal to presence. Like you can't be present unless you're in your body. And by being present, that's the most abundant thing you can experience. That's it,
Yes,
right there. So
100% right there.
yeah, we just, the more people need to feel safe to connect with their bodies, because I think that's what it comes down to. We are in our heads because
Hmm.
we don't feel safe in our bodies. And there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score,
Hmm.
which it basically talks about all the trauma that we experience in our lives gets stored in our body somewhere, and it keeps the score, it keeps tallies. So whenever we're in our heads, that's just a response to the noise or the trauma that's in our body, and we're trying to escape it.
Hmm.
But we just like, feeling is healing. You mentioned that earlier. You feel that
Yeah.
little pocket of noise, of uncomfortability in your body, and slowly that starts to transform into something else. And for us, music has been a huge part of feeling safe to feel into our
Mm.
bodies.
I love
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, feeling safe. I think the misconception, and I'm also guilty of that, oftentimes, that I expect something externally to make me feel safe. And again, it's inside. You need to tap inside, um, and not expect someone or something to satisfy you, make you feel safe, make you feel happy, whatever that is. You need to literally generate that from the inside, or tap into it, because it's already there. Um, yeah, but it's easier said than done. I'm fully aware of that. But again, music is the portal that allows me to do that, because it gets me out of the thinking mind. It gets me into the body. Music induces movement, and that doesn't necessarily only need to be dance. It can be, but it, like, sometimes when I compose. Oh, did you guys freeze up?
You did too, but you can keep going. It
You
won't
look
save
kind of
the.
frozen up right now.
Can you hear us still?
Oh, you're still there? Good.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're here.
Okay, good, good, good. Um, I just wanted to say, like, the whole thing about movement. It could be dancing. It could be like expressing your bodily emotions through dance, but it could also be like micro movements. There's a study that I read about, that listening to music basically prompts the body to move more. And movement doesn't need to mean dancing. It can literally just like mean to change your posture, or just like literally induce more movement in the body, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that's beautiful because sometimes we get so stuck and so stagnant, and energetically stagnant too. And music can literally like mix that up. And they had research with like babies who move to music, and it's interesting. It's just like these frequencies. Obviously, we're made up of frequencies, so it's clear that we're moved by these frequencies, you know. And then if you do that intentionally, then we're talking about vibrational medicine and all these beneficial effects that sound and music can have on the body and the mind too.
Like the baby thing is really interesting how babies move to music because I, growing up, like as soon as I popped out, I feel like there was music playing. And I was like shaking because I like grew up in a house. My mom's from Colombia, my dad was Italy, my dad was in a band, and
Wow.
they both loved music. So I was surrounded by it all the time. There's a video of me as a baby like shaking.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just like jerking my body to the sound. And it's like, you know, music has, I think all music always has an emotion. Um, Whether it's intentionally planted into the music or not, there's always something in there. And
Mhm.
that evokes emotion in the listener, okay? And it makes us want to move our body. And
Totally.
we're moving to the rhythm of the music that we hear,
Hmm.
which inside the music there's an emotion. So we're moving to the rhythm of the emotion that's in the song that's also evoked through us. So in that like symbiosis, we are releasing that emotion through our movement. And it doesn't have to be anything extraordinary like or fancy, just like by gently moving your body to something that you're resonating to can be
Mm.
deeply healing. And movement is always occurring, even if we're like standing still, we're breathing, and that's movement in itself. Like spirit is still like moving through the body in some way and moving energy out and through,
hmm
which is really cool to witness. And
Yeah,
yeah,
really is. Yeah, it's
yeah.
energy in motion, you know, emotion,
it is.
putting that through. And good for you to grow up in a house like that. You know, I needed
I'm
to.
very grateful for that, and I'm not surprised that I'm in the space that I'm in with the work that I do,
Yeah.
because it all connects back to what brought me the most pure form of joy was music and dance,
Mm.
and
That's
combining
so cool.
those two to build rhythmic metamorphosis. Like I think it's like me following my soul's purpose, and I know Eva comes from a similar
Yeah,
background of constantly being immersed in that too. So yeah.
yeah. Uh, we we both were yoga teachers, and are yoga teachers, and I was a DJ for a really long time.
Mm.
And when I went to go get my teacher training, I knew that I was going to use sound a certain way, and I searched for it everywhere to see if I could find somebody already doing it, and I couldn't. And then I moved to Denver and met Lisa, and we have kind of the similar idea that we realized that we were on the dance floor to just certain shows, certain frequencies, certain types of music, certain producers, they created the most shift and change in our body.
Hmm.
But we had to understand what that was like on our mats too, and we
Mm.
kind of combined the knowledge of both things, and that's where we are at with rhythmic metamorphosis. So it's kind
Oh,
of
cool.
yeah. And then yeah, and when we talk to, like, we know that music, certain sounds and certain producers like yourself, we're so excited to talk to you today because we like have been wanting, like, we use your music so much
Oh,
because
wow.
of what it does, like literally so much. You're one of like like every so many times. Yeah. So
That's so awesome.
yeah.
So you guys are based in Denver?
We are.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Okay.
Yeah. We
Very good to
are.
know. Yeah, I was in Boulder in May for the Gene Keys thing. There was like presentation from Richard Rudd, so
Yeah.
I made a weekend out of it. Really beautiful.
It is. It is really
I
Yeah.
beautiful.
must have just missed that because I recently got into the Jinkies, and I've been
Oh,
doing some of his meditations, like the three harmonies is one of my favorite, and the I forget what the meditation is called, but he talks about like smiling at the pockets of like darkness that you're
oh
feeling
yeah.
into,
Mm-hmm.
which like I think is just like such a simple thing of like the smiling at something. Like when you smile at a person,
Mm-hmm.
99% of the time they smile back at you.
Yeah.
It's like you're looking at the mirror. So, but like the energy behind a smile is such a high frequency. It's like
Mm-hmm.
love. So it comes back to
Yeah.
like, okay, when you smile at pockets of darkness, at things that like aren't really beautiful or you think are beautiful, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to go up a little more and resonate with that smile or the love behind it. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the gene keys because that's been a
Yeah,
huge
totally.
transformational thing for me the past like 3 months.
That's great. Yeah, it's a lot about softening too, which I like. Smiling and softening things. And going into the shadow, I mean, that's kind of like the teaching, right? It's like the shadow contains the gift. So again, what we talked to earlier, when, you're feeling sad and you just put on happy music to feel better, that's actually not going into that emotion. So you need
Mm.
to go into that seemingly dark room that seems scary or like off-putting, but that's exactly where you find that gift or that potential for you to have that breakthrough, and let that emotion go and transform that shadow essentially. So I'm really into these kind of teachings.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that back around because something I wanted to add to that was that, like, I think in this like spiritual world that people like really dive into is that we talk a lot about enlightenment and they associate it a lot with love and light. So it paints this picture that like in order to heal or like live a happy life, you have to like put on a smile, you have to fake it till you make
Hmm.
it. But like no, it actually means like going into the darkness, loving the darkness, even if it's pain, sitting in the pain, shaking, like listen
Hmm.
to the sad music, cry, listen to the music that makes you angry, and like express that rage, but come from a place of love.
Hmm.
Because, like, through loving the darkness is what transforms that darkness into light. That's enlightenment, or that's alchemy. That's what transforms
Hmm.
the lead into this beautiful nugget of gold. But like, yes, love is the medicine for sure.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you do. It's not spiritual bypassing is a very common thing because everyone just
Yeah.
wants to be, they want to just put a band-aid on it,
Yeah.
which is what modern medicine does. So it's so frustrating that spirituality is trying to do the same thing. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
So,
totally. There's a lot of like good vibes only, let's not talk about negativity, but that's actually not very spiritual. It's like spiritual would be to face your uncomfortability and the trauma and move through that, to the other side of it. And
mhm,
there's definitely light. It's almost like the diving for light kind of analogy. Like you have to go down, into the darkness to bring the light back up rather than just like reaching for something. And that's part of, you talked about being of service. I think that's the biggest service we can do if we do that ourselves, if we transform our own shadows or meet them and learn to embrace them and love them and through that transform them, because we can't do that for other people. We can only do it for ourselves. But then if you think about humanity as like a organism made up of all these entities that we all are, every cell needs to look after itself, and then the whole organism heals, and kind of do the thing that you do. And I think that's kind of talking about purpose and all that. People are like, oh, I can't change the world. I'm just me, and like, what am I gonna do? Is what difference can I make and stuff? And I think we misunderstand and um, underestimate the ripples, even the smallest things have. So yeah, again, just like the work is it's all inner work, and it's work. It's not easy,
Yeah.
but it's still transformative.
I think of us like spirit is like the collective, and every individual human has a soul. So like spirit is the ocean, and then each human is like standing in the water, and we're water too. And like through these transformations, this healing that we do in ourselves, it starts to vibrate in the water and starts to ripple through the water and touch the people around us. So like being of service to yourself, doing your own healing is actually healing the world around you, because it's
Hmm.
just doing this. And we do live in a world like of dark and light, of duality. And so I think that saying you said, like, in order to like elevate, you have to go down. What goes up must go down. It's constantly balancing that. And it all comes back to like what you're doing with your music, where you have these like dark undertones and then you're bringing in the light. It's a
Hmm.
full circle, full balance. And I think it encompasses like what the human experience is. So I do want
Hmm.
to talk a little more about like the specific track that you wanted to talk about today.
Oh
Castle,
yeah,
the foam and sand rework. Can you touch on that, please?
sure. Yeah, that's actually the reason why I wanted to talk about this track, is because I'm releasing a extended meditation version of that track together with the Monroe Institute. And the Monroe Institute, I didn't know who they were, to be honest, although they're the leading institute for the research and education around human consciousness. And they've done a lot of stuff that's very interesting, even around brain entrainment technology, like the whole like binaural beats thing, which was called like hemisync back then. They really pioneered a lot of this technology. So yeah, basically, long story short, I'm collaborating with them a lot these days, and we created an extended version of that track, which contains their brain entrainment signals, which are basically just like sound signals that assist the brain to shift brainwave states. You
Into
have like
alpha.
beta, alpha, delta, and all that, gamma, theta, and it's basically enhancing your expanded awareness or deeper relaxation, depending on what the signal does. So in this particular one, it's enhancing like a deeper relaxation in the listener. And yeah, so I just wanted to mention that track because we're releasing it in a couple of days as a meditation version. It's going to be on their app, on the Expand app, which is free, I believe. I mean, there's some premium content that needs to be unlocked, but that particular track is going to be in the free tier. And it's also going to be on YouTube. And yeah, I'm excited to work with institutions like that. I'm also working with a Beckley Foundation, who are like the longest standing foundation around the research of psychedelic therapy from the UK. And they're currently using some of my music in some clinical trials, which is exciting. I'm curious what's going to come out of that. And I just love how my music finds its way into these spaces sometimes without me pushing it there or even knowing that this is happening. And then they just reach out, and yeah, that's how the Monroe connection came about. It was really organic. I didn't even know who they were to begin with.
Yeah.
And now, yeah, so that's a beautiful way of following the currents sometimes, where you just flow with it.
Amazing. I wasn't able to meditate until I used sound. I
Oh,
tried for a very, very long time. I took my first meditation course with a Buddhist monk when I was like 19 or 20 years old. And I'm 44 now. And it wasn't until I started using sound that I was able to drop into meditation. So I
so interesting.
understand like the significance, and that's what we use our meditations.
Hmm.
So I can't wait to hear this one. I'm so excited because it is just a shift. We're literally just needing to shift our brain from beta
Yeah,
until to alpha at the least, right? Alpha is
exactly.
going to be light meditation and
Uh-huh.
flow state. So yeah, and then you can go into theta and gamma and delta, but yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with this particular one, we're taking people into higher theta, So it's like
Nice.
almost like dreamlike state, but you're still between waking and sleeping.
Oh,
But
amazing.
yeah, but it's a subjective experience too. I talked to the guys from the Monroe Institute about how this works, and it's not something that brain entrainment doesn't mean your brain is forced into that brain
Mm-mm.
state. Of course, you can totally resist it, but it basically assists you to move from like the busy beta kind of mindset into like alpha or like a deeper brainwave state. So that's just a great tool, that helps you achieving those states.
Well, we can't wait to listen to it. I did listen to the track that you sent us, and actually before our interview, um, I went outside and just like laid on the ground and listened to it with my eyes closed, and I felt like I just like saw glimmers of light, and like that's where the saying of like your music feels like this warm hug by the universe too. It
Mm.
just felt like I was held. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, and I can't wait to share with the audience.
Yeah, me too. And I'm also performing that track tonight actually with the signals. So I'm also interested in how that goes. Gonna be a premiere of sorts.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Uh,
Well, we hope to join you at a live event soon,
Yes.
yeah, me
and
too.
we hopefully our audience will appear at your events too because they sound so immersive and amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to share with our audience? Anyone who is looking to pursuing being an artist or tapping into their creativity? Any words of wisdom for them that you haven't mentioned?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would always advocate for literally like finding your own voice and like letting art, whatever art it is that you're making, so that's so let that be like the most authentic expression of yourself, and that's a process. That's very hard sometimes to find what that even is. It takes decluttering a lot of the conditioning and what we think we need to do, and how that needs to look like, and what success even means, and all that. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be sliced off before you find that authentic expression. And then again, this is then the biggest gift you can bring to the world if you're like authentically expressing yourself. Um, so that would be the only advice I'd have, to basically question sometimes why you do something, and feel into it, how that feels, and then question the motivation around, am I doing this to feel, safer, or like more loved, or, more appreciated? Is it really coming from a sensation of lack? There's this thing that Alan Moore, like another shaman that I like, he said, things that you do out of the desire of winning or the fear of losing aren't very pure. So it's again like dissecting that. Are you just trying to achieve something here? Or are you just afraid of being seen a certain way? So you do this other thing instead? Um, the authentic expression really lives outside of the fear of losing and the desire of winning. So
Yeah.
that's the only piece of information
That's beautifully said.
I can
It
share.
is it is beautifully said. There's a study about vibrations that people were put into like some sort of like it's called something. I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically like a chamber, a vacuum,
Hmm.
and they could, so that nothing else is getting in, and they could measure vibration. And above the frequency of love, one of the highest vibrations you can channel is authenticity.
Oh,
It's so,
interesting.
yeah, it's literally your gift to the world. And the
Right.
and the only way you can do that is when you're completely clear and present, and you can't fake
Mm.
that at all. It has to come from, exactly, not from a place of lack, not from a place of validation. It's
Hmm.
it's pretty incredible. So you hit it like right on the nail.
It's so hard to do though.
Yeah, it is.
It is so hard because we're
But it's kind of
human.
like it's the journey, it's the journey, and it's the process, and it's the creative process, quite literally, like to get
Yeah.
closer to that most authentic expression, which is then unlocking your purpose ultimately, you know. And it's a lifelong journey, and you know we're all on it. So let's have fun.
Let's have fun.
Yes, let's play.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing your art with the world and your wisdom. Will you lastly just share where our audience can find your most recent releases, your music, your social media?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my handle on all the socials is Robot Koch. So you can find me on Instagram and all these. I'm not really active on Facebook anymore, to be honest, but the profile still exists, abandoned. But like Instagram would be a good go-to if you want to hit me up. You know, I'm as responsive as I can be. Sometimes I'm not, but I'm always happy about receiving messages. So like, do hit me up if you want to say hello. And Spotify is a good resource too, and SoundCloud. I mean, I'm on all the portals, so whatever your favorite is, just find Robot Koch and Foam and Sand, which is another project of mine. They're very closely enmeshed. And yeah, just have fun digging in.
Wonderful. I'll be sure to link everything in the show notes, and that's where our
Awesome.
audience can find you. So thank you again for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you for having